The technical test for Hades 2 is live, and before we begin the video, I want to make clear this is going to be spoiler free. You're only going to see gameplay footage. That's what you're seeing in the background. It's from one of my completed runs. And I'm not going to be sharing any of the hub world content because that is going to contain story spoilers, and I want to respect those who want to go into this game blind. With that being said, let's dive in. My biggest takeaway from the technical test is that Supergiant is building a monster. This is one of the most polished testing periods I've been a part of, and if Supergiant were to just quickly turn around and drop the early access period shortly after the technical test closes, I would not be shocked in the slightest. The amount of content here is insanely impressive. The gameplay loop is satisfying, and the additions make the player far more capable than the original Hades. I honestly believe that the technical test was more so for balancing purposes than anything else, because I believe veterans of Hades will find this first area pretty easy to navigate. When you start your run, you'll notice pretty quickly that the starting weapon has decent range. In fact, I really liked the staff, and I was kind of committed to it for a long period of time. And I also learned that when I was going through that first run, that you can charge every attack. And you can do this regardless if it's buffed or not, and these attacks can be fairly devastating, but they do come at the cost of mana, so you can't just spam them. Now, mana can be recovered as you transition from stage to stage, and you'll learn really quickly, like its predecessor, this game wants you to play aggressively. In addition to your dash, you can now sprint, and if you have a specific boon attached to that sprint, you can do continuous damage while moving, which, by the way, very entertaining. There are also environmental hazards littered throughout the stages, and these are going to help you take out large groups, and overall, it just feels like the original game, but on steroids. Now, because I hadn't played Hades in quite some time, it took around 3 runs for me to reacclimate, but once I did, I was really breezing through the opening stages all the way to the boss. I thought that boss fight was a fun fight. I didn't think it was too difficult, and I love the fact that in between certain phases, you might get a nice surprise like being turned into a sheep. And this is hilarious because all you can do is hop around slowly until you revert back to your base form. But once that boss fight is completed, you're sent back to the starting hub, and from there, you can prepare for your next run. And like the first game, you can interact with different characters, give them gifts if you happen to come across honey on your runs, and purchase items from the different shops that will help you upgrade your character, and this will obviously make your runs easier. So, a lot of returning features from the original Hades. After you're done exploring the starting hub, you can then prep for your run. When you make your transition into the altar room, you're going to find weapons, support tools, and accessories. There's also going to be an altar that will allow you to apply various buffs to Mel. If you don't have the capacity to apply a specific buff due to its cost, you can use resources that you'll gain throughout the run to increase that capacity. You will be given a number of different notifications, by the way, if you do not apply certain buffs for your character, because they really want you to be prepared as you're going on your run. It's really funny how often they're like, hey, you do realize that you can add this to you, and this will allow you to like beat death at least once, or this is going to increase your attack or make you 20% faster with your sprint, which, by the way, that 20% increase is a godsend sometimes because you are zooming. Now, when it comes to the starting support tools, it's interesting because the moment you're able to unlock them, all they really do is gather unique resources, but these are required because you want to unlock new weapons, and it's going to unlock certain items in the starting hub. What I learned very quickly was that you can only bring one support tool, just like you can only bring one weapon. And I learned that the hard way because I was trying to gather a resource that I didn't have the specific tool for, but I was continuously denied. And I was disappointed because this specific resource, I did not experience it for multiple runs. So when I finally saw it and I got really excited, I just didn't have the tool required, which really sucked because you are allowed to unlock a lot of stuff in the technical test. And I just wanted this new support tool that could really upgrade my character. You just kind of live and learn. Now, once you commit to a run, like its predecessor, you're going to be gifted a new boon at the start. A number of familiar gods returned from the original. And guess what, everyone? Aphrodite is back, and she is as spicy as ever. But now, she comes with a shield. Me, honestly, I expected that, I was going to hit a wall at some point, because you can't go through a technical test and not think to yourself that there's going to be a bottom, but man, I was wrong. The content didn't dry up because with every new run, I experienced something new. What Supergiant has done here is more than enough to justify an early access period. The production values are strong. I did not experience any audio glitches. The animations were fantastic, and I didn't see any real mechanical hiccups. This felt like a completed package, and it made me curious as to how much bigger Hades 2 is going to be in comparison to its predecessor. So in about 3 hours, you're being introduced to all of this different content that not only affects your run, but it's also a lot of story stuff as well. Like, there's a lot of narrative content here, and it's pretty surprising because you'll go back to the starting hub and you'll go down and talk to all these different characters, and they are just force feeding you lore. And while it's great, it's also kind of a big tease because you know damn well that after the technical test and through the early access period, you're not going to know the full story for quite some time. But you're invested because the narrative here feels just as personal as Hades. One of the most impressive things about the original game was that it featured a practically perfect gameplay loop and was supplanted by an equally impressive narrative. That feels like the case here. The gameplay loop is already addicting, and the frequent lore drops really make this feel like it's going to be on par with Hades, and that is no easy feat. I mentioned before that Hades 2 is essentially the original game on steroids. You don't have to reinvent the wheel with this game, you just need to introduce enhancements and quality of life improvements, and I think Supergiant has done a fantastic job of that. Now, it's obviously early, but what's here is practically perfect. And I understand that there are probably going to be individuals who had issues while playing Hades 2, but my experience was there were no problems. No major issues. None that I can really think of. I was reviewing my footage recently and I went, I don't see any major problems. Like, I don't see any major glitches. I didn't see any real major mechanical issues. I'm kind of shocked at the level of polish of this, and I still am. Even after looking back at my footage, I was like, damn. Nothing here was cheap. Didn't have any cheap deaths, didn't have any really major mistakes, wasn't caught up on geometry, none of that stuff. It was very surprising. Now, if I could probably lean into like balancing stuff, I think the difficulty needs to be tweaked just a little bit. And hear me out. Enemies are definitely capable, but Mel, who's the main character, is far swifter and has a deeper kit from the start, and this can make some of the early runs really easy. I would not be surprised in the slightest if more talented players completed their first run with relative ease. You're more than likely going to be subjected during that time frame to just like 1 or 2 boons, but some of the abilities you acquire can easily carry you to the end. But beyond the difficulty balancing, like I said, I don't see any real issues. I mean, if you have played Hades 2 and you said, man, the game's just too hard for me, there is a God mode you can toggle. And I only found out about this through a really funny conversation, and they brought up the fact that God mode is available for those of you who want to just experience the narrative, and I think that's a really cool touch by the developers. The technical test ends when you complete your 5th successful run. The game just will not allow you to partake in another run. It stops you from going through that gate. That's all understandable. You are still free to explore the starting hub and interact with the different characters if there are interactions that can take place. It's completely fine. It's understandable. I don't think they want you to play that game that much. But while it locks that individual save, the one that's completed all of those runs, you can boot up a new one, which I think is really funny. So for those individuals who are speedrunners or challenge runners, you can still create content. You can really optimize your times, and I'm looking forward to watching all of those in the next week or so. I just found this game to be awesome, and I'm really interested to see how talented players really approach some of these combat challenges. Now, When I went through my second save, basically what I was doing was falling in combat early because I wanted to see when I hit the bottom in terms of content. And here's the surprising part. There's a lot here, and I didn't understand why Supergiant allowed this much content early on, because you're pretty much going through in just like the first small act, and you can see all of these different lore drops and all this new content being just pushed at you and thrown at you. It's just like this constant stream, and it just doesn't stop. And here's the thing, I don't know when the technical test is actually ending, and I don't know if the saves are going to carry over, but honestly, I don't care because I want to experience all of this again. It's just that good. I really feel that after my time with the technical test of Hades 2, that this has potential to 1, be better than its predecessor, and 2, be Supergiant's best game. These two feats are nothing to scoff at because Supergiant has never made a bad game, and Hades is widely regarded as one of the best roguelikes, and I believe it's one of the core titles responsible for the genre being as prevalent and as popular as it is. If you go into Supergiant's catalog, I dare you to find a bad game. You won't. Hades 2 is shaping up to be a Game of the Year type of candidate when it eventually gets its full release. I'm really looking forward to all of the different updates and tweaks to this game, and I know the community is as well. And I'm feeling like, man, when this game goes into early access, I may gift it to people. I just may gift it to people who like leave comments on this video, just randomly, because I want as many people as possible to experience this game. And once again, Supergiant has resurfaced to remind everyone that they are one of, if not, the best indie studio, considering that they haven't had a bad game. And they've released a number of Game of the Year contenders. They just don't miss. And that's going to do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I am Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.